The most beautiful things in life do not come from me being a bricklayer, and they do not come on my time when I want to force it, and they do not come from me doing one thing and never having to touch it again. To bring a more gardener mindset toward the things that I cherish most in my life, and recognizing that these things must be given their time, these things must be given their consistency, they must be given their space, and the hindrances to them removed consistently in order that they can flourish and grow and bear fruit and create all on their own in a way that I never could force into existence myself.
Hey Peyton, nice to see you again on this beautiful day. This time with a random quote where a man asked his gardener why his plants grew so beautifully. And the gardener said, "I don't force them to grow. I remove what stops them." Peyton, what do you think about this little parable?
There's two sides of this that are both beautiful and true. One that stands out is that the most beautiful things that arise, the most lovely fruits of creativity, arise in a way that cannot be manufactured by us, cannot be forced by us, cannot be struggled into existence by us. They must emerge from a source that is beyond our finite struggle, beyond our efforting into existence. The other side of this is the via negativa. It's not possible for us to command the creative source, or to force a plant to grow and bear fruit, or to force an artistic project to truly be inspired and come into the world in a unique and amazing way. But it's very possible for us to get in the way of it. It's very possible for us to create conditions in which it cannot emerge or break through. It's very possible to salt the earth, but it's very not on the menu to force this plant to grow right here or in the way that we want it. And it's kind of a reframe or a useful point of view on many of the types of fruits that we would wish to cultivate in our lives, seeing them as something that we remove obstacles to, are aware of what impedes these things, and have a mindset of cultivation, not a mindset of forcing into existence. A cultivation mindset isn't so tense and isn't so independent, isn't so self-sufficient and all on me, all on my heroic shoulders. It's creating the conditions, allowing flow to emerge, contributing, seeing what the world puts out, and receiving causes and conditions. There has to be rain for the gardener's plants to grow. There has to be the right conditions in the soil. There have to be so many things that exist in the whole environment, and the one cultivating in the gardener is shaping events, is moving and guiding the causes and conditions to some extent, and then allowing things to emerge. And I think this is probably a healthier balance when we look at our relationships that we want to emerge, when we look at our own emotional, psychological well-being that we wish to cultivate, when we wish to look at our creative endeavors, when we wish to look at the things that bring us joy or our connection with spirit. Many of these things we will get in our own way if we try too hard to force, but where we can really productively help is actively bring attention, awareness to the causes and conditions that can prevent these things, and intentionally chart a path to cultivate the right causes and conditions, to give the emerging beauty a better chance of life and flowering and bearing fruit. How do you think about this on the various dimensions of our life? How does this apply?
I love garden metaphors overall.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how gardens keep us healthy and nourish us. Because there's a saying as well where if you want to grow old and healthy, then you should get yourself a garden, because the range of movements that you do when you cultivate plants, when you get rid of the weeds, and when you see the fruits which you helped to grow, this is a very regenerating, very like really good for your soul, really good for your body. really good for your health as well, because you are outside. And every person who's growing older and has a garden probably can relate to that, what I just said. And this can also be projected into the mental realm. If you want to grow old and healthy in your mind, then probably you should also cultivate some cultural, culturally valuable endeavors that are creative or artistic, which you can see as kinds of plants with their own genome, with their own unique way to grow. And you are their garden, and you can cultivate whatever is beautiful, whatever can bear fruits in that, whatever can bear fruits. If you play a musical instrument, then you can give concerts and inspire other people. You can create a smile on their face if you tell a nice joke, or you tell a good story. That is all something creative, something you cultivate the ability to become better, and which helps you to stay fluid within your own mind. And like, I just like these metaphors with that. And the same way, like you said, you cannot force it into your life. You cannot just say, okay, I want to become the best pianist ever and I want to force it into my life. If you have no aptitude for it, then you won't stick to it and your life will be miserable because you don't love it. So you cannot just force the fruits to grow and then share them and eat them in terms of playing some beautiful stuff for other people or for yourself. But you can remove what stops you from it. You can just remove the busy schedule which prevents you from really trying to learn that instrument and learn how to tell stories. Can remove your negative thinking about, oh, I'm not good enough to even try. I'm not good enough to even be disciplined enough to learn it to a level which I wanted to share with others. So this is a reframe, like you said. It's a cultivation mindset. And for a thing that you want to cultivate, you need to first select what it is, what you want to have in your garden, and then help it to grow in terms of remove what it is, what prevents it from the best possible growth. And then for sure, add some nutrition, add some water, whatever it needs. Have a good pot for the roots to grow in and anchor themselves. But you have to cultivate something if you want to have it for keeps in your life, and if you want to have a garden which becomes more and more beautiful. So Peyton, how do you find out what is preventing the growth of the seeds you select and try to plant in your garden, in the garden of your mind? How do you find out?
What comes to mind first is awareness. And I think there's something to be said about a good gardener doesn't merely have an annual schedule that he follows like a calendar. And so, for example, compare two gardeners. One says, okay, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 2 p.m., I will water the plants this much. The other gardener is aware and says, oh, it rained 4 times last week. I don't want to overwater my plants. Or there was a drought. Or there's this pest coming in and I need to do this thing and plant this thing to move them around. There's some degree of awareness, observing reality, thinking and responding in alignment, in balance with what the situation calls for. This is the gardener mentality toward many of these things. The other is, I would contrast in my mind the mindset of a gardener versus a bricklayer. With a bricklayer, if you have a big wall to build, then if you work 4 hours today, you will get 4 hours of bricks laid. If you work 16 hours today, you will get 16 hours of bricks laid. And you just have to do as much as you can, or the more you do, the more wall you will have at the end of the day. A gardener is not that way. I have experienced before that the quiet shame of overwatering a plant and causing it to become less healthy because I was doing too much and not finding the right balance. And some things in our lives do function like brick walls. If we're trying to pay off debt and we take on a second job and we're trying to work more hours so that we have more dollars to pay off the debt and we work through this can be exactly what's needed or valuable or noble or whatever. And it can be like bricklaying. But many of the most beautiful things that we can cultivate in our lives don't work that way. If we don't give a relationship the right amount of balance and space and time, then it cannot be healthy. If we don't give our own psyche the right amount of flexibility and freedom to feel this way, freedom to feel this way, freedom to flow and express this emotion when it comes up, and then this, if we try to be one way all of the time or try to be always at the destination and never along the journey, then it will stunt us from growing and keep us oftentimes locked into a state of imbalance or repression that's not an internal state of harmony because it can't truly flow. And I think that the other element of this that comes to mind is time. When you are bricklaying, you can try to get a 2-week project done in a week, and it can go well if you just go twice as hard and go super fast and work long days and this and that. But if you're gardening, you can't get your whole year's worth of plants ready for harvest in 2 weeks, no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you do. It takes the time it takes. In trying to
Um,
force a project to completion, you ruin what was almost ripe, as it says in some book. And so giving things that do take time to grow, to blossom, to flourish, the time that they need, including our own growth, including our own coming back to balance, our own healing, our relationships, and certainly anything creative that we want to be truly beautiful, allowing and surrendering to the rhythm that the nature requires. This is an important element in our mindset. We should not try to impose our will of time and velocity onto things that are completely impervious to our will of time and velocity. Otherwise, we might ruin something that could have been beautiful if it was given the space and the air and the duration that it needs. How do you think about the relationships with these? What are the areas in our life that we are bricklayers and gardeners, and what are the other elements of being a wise gardener in our own life?
Very good question. Well, definitely parts of it is the discipline to go outside and the
Mm,
discipline to take your time and pursue regular actions, which are hygienic factors in terms of you need to have you keep up a certain kind of level of hygiene in your garden so that you don't have a level of weeds which overgrow the plants you try to grow. You try to have like a good amount of it without giving all your life to it. So it is like the disconnection between the input and the output you have as a gardener can work up to a certain kind of point, but if you tip over that point and work too much on it, like you said, you run the risk of ruining a good plant which almost bear fruit. So it is awareness, which is the key factor in it. You need to be aware of how well and healthy your garden is. You need to be aware of what necessities you have in terms of preparing for the winter to put in the work so that you can lay all the bricks so that you can be safe and warm when the winter strikes. You also I read the notes I took, but I couldn't read the one I thought what was important. Okay, that's just flow. It is about the flow. You also need to, yeah, to get into the flow, to get into your own rhythm, to choose whatever you like to grow. And then, yeah, well, I'm discovering what kind of discipline it needs to grow some fruit. Because for now, I just trust that when I put into the plants into the soil and the seedlings into the soil, that it grows if I provide the right condition, that it grows if I provide the watering and don't block the sunlight from helping them to grow out of the air. So it also requires the knowledge and the trust that if you plant and if you water and if you give nutrition, that probably some of it will grow if the conditions are right for it, if it is the right point in time, and if it's the right pot and soil for it. So it is a learning experience always to also select the right combinations of soil, nutrition, plants, if we stay in that metaphor, and learn from all the failures you had when you try to grow something and you try to cultivate a certain kind of habit in your garden of habits, maybe. But then you let the weeds overgrow it again. You didn't water it enough. You didn't cultivate it enough, or you try to even force it. And then you had to take a break because the roots got damaged.
Hmm.
And so you need to be aware of what hinders your habits, for example, to grow, or
Hmm.
kindness to grow, everything you want to see growing in your life. And then go the via negativa.
The via negativa, I'm reminded in this moment how much damn weeding there is when you have a garden. How much you have to go out there, get on your hands and knees and pull out this weed and this weed one at a time. And they just emerge, they emerge all over the place. And you got to constantly be in a real world garden where you're trying to grow some stuff. It's that's so much of the tedium of it all. And I think the equivalent in the gardens of our lives, the gardens of what we try to cultivate in our experience in our life. Oftentimes, the equivalent of weeding is all of the things that get in the way of our capacity for presence or awareness or adequate space for the things to grow. And so maybe weeding in our life is the act of solitude or meditation that we need to allow the thoughts to flow through and to allow us to have some space with our thoughts or with the cycles within our minds. Maybe the weeding in our life is removing specific sources of negative energy or confusion in our lives. Maybe weeding is removing ourselves from certain situations that do not serve us in our lives, or certain relationships that no longer serve us, or certain environments and that are not beneficial to what we ultimately wish to grow. And the consistency element that you point out is not to be forgotten. You can't get all of your weeding done in the month of May, even if you work 24 hours in a row. You will need to come back for the weeds in 2 weeks or in another week and keep the consistency. You can't get it all done up front and then never have to do it again. It's a balance that we have to strike, and we shouldn't be frustrated when we show up again and there's another set of weeds in 2 weeks. It's not a surprise. It's not a surprise that it creates or that it needs some consistency to maintain the balance. This is a part of being a cultivator. So with that, I have the intention to recognize that the most beautiful things in life do not come from me being a bricklayer, and they do not come on my time when I want to force it, and they do not come from me doing one thing and never having to touch it again. To bring a more gardener mindset toward the things that I cherish most in my life, and recognizing that these things must be given their time, these things must be given their consistency, they must be given their space, and the hindrances to them removed consistently in order that they can flourish and grow and bear fruit and create all on their own in a way that I never could force into existence myself. This is the sight or the view of many of these things that I wish to bring more and more into my life, because I think when I forget that and I try to treat gardening like bricklaying, I can struggle against reality, disagree with the way that things work. Far
Mhm.
better to recognize how things work and to align myself with them voluntarily. Things go much smoother. How about
Right.
you? What is your intention out of that this week?
Very similar. Most beautiful things come out of cultivation. And the same applies to the habits of our minds and our thoughts, which come and go. And we give space for them to stay. So it is always good to remember that it matters how we feel from point to point in time, how we think in our regular life, and that we should be able to cultivate more and more to sit with our stillness, with ourselves, and be happy with ourselves and be content with our thinking. So, because we cannot escape from ourselves, so it's probably wise to try to cultivate a garden of thoughts which is pleasing to witness. So, this is my intention. to weed out what doesn't serve me well and to cultivate what is beautiful to witness.
Awesome. Lovely intention, man. I appreciate the conversation very much. It's so good talking to you.
Likewise, man, likewise. And see you next week, my friend.
See you on the next one.